messing around.
Today, we are having a Loft meeting with the June Diane Raphael, a.k.a. Dr. Sadie. She was a dear friend of Jess and Cece, a gynecologist, and most importantly, a lesbian. She was featured in seasons 1, 2, 3, and 6, doing a total of 8 episodes, and one of the most beloved characters of the New Girl universe. Hi.
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 It's so funny because I will say that I get recognized from New Girl more than you would think. And I'm always like, my hair's so different. I feel like I don't look like the same person who was on that show. Played Dr. Sadie. But the number of times and in the randomest places, someone will come up to me and say, and catch my eye from across it happened. We were at Global Entry flying back into the country and someone shouted from like lines over, Dr. Sadie. And I was like, hi. But it is, well, I don't have to tell you all, but wow, the power of New Girl.
Yeah, what really shocked me was that when it aired, it was like, there was a frenzy around it when it happened. But then during, COVID, it moved to Netflix.
And that's where, yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this whole new crop of fans kind of showed up because they thought it was a new Netflix show. And they were consuming it, not week to week over 8 years, like in a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was like this, they just were living with us so deeply and then repeating the show. It became this comfort show. So people share with us. And so I can imagine all of a sudden, like Dr. Sadie is like back in these streets.
Yeah, she is. And I that's so fascinating how that happens. I mean, I was on a Netflix series for almost 8 years. And so I do understand the power of Netflix because it's really, and how people consume it is so different from how like you and I watched TV, that consumption and how people just get it in their bones. It's just different than waiting a week, catching a rerun. It's like you are with your shows in a more intimate way.
I mean, it changed, to be honest with you, like how I started watching TV during like COVID when we were all kind of locked down, is I started to, within with shows that were airing week to week, I would wait. It's terrible to say out loud, but I would wait until they were like on the streaming service and then I could watch it in a night like a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. You don't have to apologize. To me.
I was just sort of like, people are like, are you watching? I was like, no, don't tell me anything. Don't be a terrible human. Don't spoil it. I have to wait 2 months to watch it in a night.
I will watch it when it's fully cooked.
That's exactly right.
Which means all of the episodes are available to me.
That's right. Which then became the most annoying thing when it would be like previously, last week. I was like, get out of here with that noise. I was here 1 second ago. You're wasting my time. It
is a different beast. And it's amazing though how shows can get new lives, and I think that piece of it is so wonderful in terms of like audience reach. It's really very cool.
Yeah. I mean, doing New Girl was such like a wonderful experience for me. And so it's kind of nice that we get to do this podcast now where we get to kind of walk down memory lane and relive it and learn all the stuff that we genuinely didn't know because we were so in it. It was super intense. I watched each episode as it came out, but I've never rewatched it. Like I've never done it. And now we are, and we're like, this is actually like a pretty good show. We're like, okay, we kind of get it now. And when we get to talk to everybody and learn like how we got these incredible people like yourself, like how they got onto the show, like what was their path. And some of the paths have been so surprising to us. We had no idea. So what was yours? How did you find your way to Dr. Sadie?
I was thinking about it. And Hannah, of course, as I head into perimenopause, like the brain's getting foggier.
Yeah, got you.
Put that disclaimer on the episode. Like woman is entering into a new hormonal phase, forgetting things. So it's like, I don't know if it's long COVID. I don't know if it's perimenopause, but things are falling away at a rapid rate.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew I was coming on to talk to you today, and I was like, oh, I have this memory of auditioning. Now, this could be wrong, but I have a memory of auditioning 2 times for 2 different roles. Now, what they were, I don't know. I feel like one was maybe the Lizzie Kaplan role.
Oh, yeah, I can see
but
that.
I don't know if that makes sense with season 1, because I know it was season 1. You're the
cracking me up right
here.
now because this is exactly how I talk. I'm always like, listen, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to tell you everything as truthfully as I can. It may be a complete lie.
It may all be wrong. It may all.
I may be fully making this up, but I think this is how it goes.
But what's troubling too is like it's either so truthful that you're going to be like you're a savant and have a photographic memory, or it's like I'm talking about a different show.
That's right.
You know, it's going to be so right or so wrong.
Yeah.
But I believe that I auditioned for, maybe it was one of Max's girlfriends on the show. I know I went in 2 other times for 2 different roles. And the casting director, please remind me who it was.
Anya?
Yes.
It was
Thank
Anya?
you. It was Anya, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And the audition was, sometimes you just have a good experience, rarely. But sometimes, and God, I haven't been in a room in so long now. It's like not how it's done anymore. But sometimes there's an ease to it. And I felt both times that I auditioned like, oh, the writing is in my body. Like it wasn't work to learn it, integrate it. It was easy both times, which I think is always the sign of good writing. When you really have to like muscle to memorize lines, I'm always like, this is not the way people talk. So anyway, I had auditioned twice, didn't get either role. And then I believe, again, could be so true and could be nothing but false. But what I believe to be true, in this house, we believe that that I was then offered Dr. Sadie after having done like what I think was a good job with both of those auditions. So anyway, I believe that is what happened, that I was then given, offered the role, which at that time in my career was such a big deal.
I was about to say, wow, that's so wild to me, right? Because
and
I
also
feel like
maybe not true. If it's that wild, it's probably not true.
No, I believe it though. I believe it because I do feel like that's like the gift of like those great casting directors, and Anya's one of them, where they go like, we get it. We know what they're capable of. We don't need to do the dance. We need to fill this role. We have the person, and then they take that leap of trust. But I do feel like unless you were like some mega A-list star, it was quite rare at that time to just like get an offer unless you were like fully established.
Well, what's the story of my career, and I say this without any shame, I'm thrilled about this, is that my career has been built on people, other actresses who are our bigger names, dropping out literally the day before for unforeseen circumstances, and me getting a call like, basically, can you show up tomorrow at 6 a.m.? And I'm always like, yes. And then I get the job. So it's, again, I have been very happy to get jobs that way. That is not a problem for me, but I don't think that's what happened here. I think I genuinely, shockingly, I think I had been in contention for several other guest stars. And on the show and didn't get them. And then they were like, well, she could do this. I'd have to ask Liz Merriweather, but I believe that's what happened. It was so early on. I mean, here's the cool thing, and this is why I hold the experience near and dear to my heart. It was very interesting to be on a show yes, it would go on to become such a huge hit, but there was so much buzz around it. There was so much expectation. It was like this, it was just a very cool show to be on. And I remember being there and feeling like, oh, wow, this is an intense environment. I don't use the word intense in a negative way. I just mean it was like, it felt like everybody knew that this was something.
It's funny. People talk about that, about how they came on set and the whole thing just felt like very like electric.
Yes.
Like it felt like this weird lightning in a bottle thing that was happening, and it was exciting and you got to be part of it. And it's funny because Lamorne and I talk about it, right? Like for me, and for him too, it was like our first real experience. And then there had been people who had been in the game longer than us and who had, a variety of experiences. And I remember Max saying to us, going, yeah, it's not all like this. Just so you know, soak it up. Because this is not how it's always like when you get on a set or you book a job or it's a show. But for us, it's like, when it's all right? So in the weirdest way, we didn't feel it as much because for him and I, because it was our first experience. So everything was just new. The learning curve was steep, but it took, I would say, a couple years for us to fully understand that we are in this like very rare moment. And I remember having a moment sitting on like that brown couch, the new girl couch. And I don't know if you ever have this feeling in your life or whatever, where I just remember sitting there and whenever they're setting up a scene and I was like, I'm here right now. And at some point, this is all going to go away. At some point, inevitably, the show will end. It's not going to run for like 9,000 years. And I was like, but it's happening now. I'm here right now. And really trying to like watch like our first AD running around like yelling, Rosoli, we're yelling for something, need to move faster, and like all of the little things that were happening, and just trying to like really like observe it. And I just remember it really clear. And that was like maybe a couple years in though. But a lot of people who had been in the industry longer were just like, oh no, when you walked on that set, you knew. This is something unique.
Yes. And my first day on set was not on the Fox lot. It was on location. I mean, maybe the base camp was, but we went to this like weird office building because it was a scene that took place in my office where I was checking out Jake Johnson for something. I don't remember what it was. But Zoe had brought him to me.
Is this the cancer episode? Yeah. And you're like, I'm a gynecologist.
Yes. Yes. Sir.
Right. Got it.
But that scene, well, first of all, was directed by Lynn Shelton. May she rest in peace. And I was so excited to work with her because I had seen Hump Day only weeks earlier, which was a movie she directed and wrote and was in, I believe. And I thought she was a genius. And so I was so excited to work with her. And I knew Jake from UCB. So the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. And I don't think he and I had ever necessarily like improvised together, but I knew him from kind of the improv community in LA. And I just remember doing that scene and feeling like, oh, this isn't true of every set. Oh, Zoe wants me to be funny. She wants me to do well. Lynn wants me to do well. Jake wants me to do well. Like there was this, nobody was squashing my creative instincts. And I think that I, had also in the rehearsal or whatever, improvised. And I think they realized like, oh, let her do whatever she wants. But there was a spirit of like, okay, if you can beat this or if you can make this better, then do it, And it was really thrilling to be a part of something like that where it felt like, no, the best thing wins, not just the most important person in this room gets to decide. So yeah, I was really like struck by that. And the character's so not me, but I loved playing that kind of like dry, understated, and it was just so much fun. But yeah, that was my first experience, and I thought, oh, I guess that I did that, and I'll never be seen or heard from. I mean, I think, don't we all feel that way as actors? Like, oh, I just finished this job. I'll never work again.
Right. Yes. That is how we feel all the time.
That was nice, and that's a wrap on me. It's a self wrap. So
just gonna get in my car, drive off the lot.
Yeah, goodbye. And I'll drive out to another state and open up a flower shop. But that life is done.
That's it.
And it's one of the crazy things about being an actor. And but yeah, I was like so happy to come back and to get to do more scenes. And
it's one of you do two of my favorite scenes. One where Schmidt shows up to ask if he's good at sex.
Yes.
And he's explaining all the things, and it's turning you on to so this insane level, but also you're so angry because it's a man. Sure. That's doing it, and the way you are in that scene, even now, it'll make me cry because because again, I haven't rewatched the show, so I get to watch it just like a fan now because I'm so far from it, and I was like in tears because that level, it's only a real woman can understand. To be turned on beyond a point where you're not in control of the feeling, but also a very entitled, inappropriate rage towards this man.
This person,
those two truths can be true in that moment, and you play it so beautifully and so funny. It's one of my favorite. And the other is when I feel like you're in the Bachelorette episode, and you're just hitting on everybody and being like wildly like out of pocket and would be fully canceled.
Yes. Well, I had the experience, I think, of being pregnant. My character, Dr. Sadie, was pregnant because Kay Cannon was my wife / girlfriend.
Yes.
But then I think I was actually pregnant for one of the last times you know what I realized, Hannah, as I was sitting here? They actually did ask me to come back for the like finale. And I remember being asked to get on a horse. It was a day on a horse in Malibu. Is this ringing a bell?
No.
Okay. I remember being told, maybe they rewrote this. Maybe it wasn't at all the last script.
We haven't gotten there yet. We're only on season 2. I'm rewatching this in like real time as we go. That's so funny.
That's so fun. Okay, so whatever the scene was.
Okay.
I really wanted to be in I was like so excited, but I had just had a C-section. And I remember you and I were talking about motherhood before we started and the podcast, and I remember having that moment of being like, do I just try to do it? Because I think as an actor in this industry, there's the constant battle as a mom or at least I'll speak for myself, of like, what do I give to this town of myself? Because it's often taking away something from my kids. Where will I travel to? What kind of hours will I work? When I was breastfeeding and all that, like, what kind of setting is this to even make it possible, to work? And, New Girl had some intense hours, and I know there were parents on that show. And I thought about that quite a bit because it's one of the things that I feel like our industry is so behind on, where we you know, we have intimacy coordinators, and Me Too certainly opened huge conversations and tackled so much. And also, our industry does not acknowledge the amount of labor women do in terms of primary caretaking in their children, and the hours that parents, I mean, I'll say parents across the board, put in. You know, I've seen actresses literally like walk off sets because they were having like mental breakdowns from being away from their kids, not having seen their kids in 5 days, and they live in the same house. You know how difficult it can be. Mm-hmm. And so this is like a constant battle, and it certainly was. It's easier for me now because I've been able to get clear on a lot of these things and what, you know, my priorities are. But at the same time, like, we've been through 2 major labor movements, and work is work. And people also need to work. And so, but I think there's so many strides that our industry needs to take when it comes to parenting, especially mothers on sets, reasonable work hours, etc. Because it is like, especially for new moms, it becomes a mental health issue. Yeah. But at that time, so when I was offered to come back, I remember staring at the email, my agent calling me, and I was like, I'm still in like the pair kind of the diapers mesh, that the
the mesh underwear. Yeah.
I'm still in
the beloved Cedar Sinai
undies.
Mesh undies.
I loved those. Mm-hmm. I'm still in my mesh undies. I am on some serious pain meds. I've been told I cannot pick up my toddler.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if I should get on a horse. No, again, what the scene was, what's coming to mind. And so anyway, long story short, I said no. And yeah, I remember being like, okay, I have 2 kids now, and I'm saying no. Now that, I guess maybe it was a clearer decision, because it's like, well, I don't think I can physically do it. But, these are the things that mothers really, especially when so much work is out of LA now, that we really contend with. Mm-hmm. And in an industry that's so competitive, and we're told to just be so grateful to get any job, it's hard, man, it is hard. And I have been lucky to work in LA for so many years. I've only had to travel a bit.
Don't you feel though there's like a shift though that happens with work when your priorities shift in your own life, where so many of those jobs then come from relationships? Yes. I feel like from relationships and from people you can speak to really honestly, and then you can like kind of work around what is the best for what you're trying to balance in your work life, family balance. Like, we had this conversation many times on Not Dead Yet, the show I did with Gina, because she did first season pregnant, second season with a new baby. And it's so funny because you can understand it intellectually. Like, if you're listening to this and you don't have kids, you can get it. And you can see that this is not a fair situation for mothers that are working. But then to have your baby and then to be on set, it's like a whole new way, because now you're experiencing it and you're living it. And I remember the shock that Gina was in, and the big moves that her and I worked together on to just like make sure that everybody was feeling safe and good, and we truly knew what was important, and not feeling like we had to apologize or feel guilty for asking to take that like right time and space. And it felt like nothing had changed, from decades ago. So it's challenging, and it really does become about like your own personal boundaries and about having to say no. I remember watching all those specials, remember on like E, where it was like, where are they now? And then they're just talk about some like sitcom actress or whatever, and they were just like, and she just disappeared. Nobody knows. And I'm like, no, she had no choice.
I bet I know.
Yeah.
I bet I know where she went.
She had to raise her children, and you didn't create a space for her to be able to work in a way that was like where she could survive as a human. Right. So she had to make the choice. She didn't want to stop working, but the work environment is not built for mothers, especially of young children. So it is interesting. It's funny because it says here, I'm reading my notes, that you are in season 7, which is our final season.
Okay,
so maybe they shifted it or moved it or changed it to be like, okay, so how do we, because I feel like Liz is such a special, wonderful human that probably was like, oh, okay, if she had that information, like June physically cannot do this, the mesh will not allow. And so did they pivot?
Come back. Okay, so here's what I remember. I shot something because I was actually in Boston shooting something else. And I believe that I shot something on my iPhone that was going to be shown in okay, so that was used. But
interesting. I get it.
Maybe what it was maybe it was season 6. That would make more sense. Well, I don't know. Wasn't there something where like they thought this show was going to end one season earlier? Yeah,
I think that's what it was. And it was done, and they were racing to shoot this coda because they're like, I guess we got canceled. And they were just like, we need to wrap up a whole series of this beloved show, bonkers. And then all of us just had to sit and write letters begging for a few episodes so that we could close out the series with some respect and like dignity. Really like, isn't that wild?
Yes, it is wild. Okay, this is all coming back to me. I'm so scared Liz Merriweather's going to fact check me. Yeah, no, I think it was something like that where God, why do I remember being asked to be on a horse? You know, that's too specific for me to have like wildly made up. But yeah, it's so true. I mean, it is the same. Listen, it's the same reason why, you know, the women who do run for office either don't have small children or, you know, are old enough that they have children who are out of the house and don't have those like primary caretaking needs anymore. This is a reality where you see men. Listen, I saw a lot of men on your show have small children and work those hours. Okay. So it's just a different beast.
Yeah.
And this is the last thing I'll say about it, but we are supposed to, you know, if you look at the trajectory of how much money women make, we will make the most money when we have our first children. And just timing wise, right? And women are having children later and later, and that's a trend that's probably only going to continue. We're not going to go back to having kids when we're 21. Most women are now waiting. But when we put all of that investment of our 20s and sometimes half of our 30s into our career, you know, at the exact moment we should start to see the fruits of it is when we're having our first children. And so then we wonder, why are there no C-suite level women? Why are there no, you know, up and down the ballot, there aren't enough women? It's like, well, it's motherhood. Right. Dummies. You know what I mean? And if we don't make those adjustments, if we don't change like the infrastructure and rebuild it so that it's there to support women of small children, like it's never going to change.
Yeah.
I'm done. Okay. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to get out of here.
So all we have to do is change the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's so simple. It's so simple. And rebuild.
I have to ask you these wonderful questions that came in from fans. We've gotten so many questions over our 2 seasons of doing this podcast about Dr. Sadie. Like, really? I know you feel it. Yet, facts. There's something, I think, because she can be so scathing.
Sure.
And then when she's drunk, she's just so wildly inappropriate that people love her. And
Yeah,
again,
she's like
because
an
she
onion.
stayed in the universe, right? She just kept coming back and showing up and had these inappropriate, super funny moments. They've become iconic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read you some of these questions from our beloved fans. So, I love the episode Bachelorette Party where Sadie encourages Cece to pin the dong on Shivrang. How do you feel about bachelorette parties? Is there a game you love? And then they say, we're such a big fan of your podcast. How did this get made? How did you get started on that project? Two separate things.
Well, I mean, I haven't been to bachelorette party in a long time. I feel like that, you know, I'm now sort of in the age of divorce.
Divorce parties.
Divorce parties, yeah. Like I'm no longer in the age of like my friends getting married, which is nice. But I don't love a party with a game, but I do love I do feel like you need a stripper.
Yeah.
You do. You know, you need someone, man, woman, otherwise, to take their clothes off.
Right.
And to pay good money to see that. And you can call me whatever you want to call me, but I believe that is something for the first night of a bachelorette party that like you need to have lift off, you know, to set the tone.
I just want to say the way you're even saying this right now, the tone of voice, it just sounds like full Dr. Sadie. And it's like, and so since no one's here, that person will be me. And so here we go. It feels like, are you going to take your clothes off? This is a podcast.
It's true though. It's like you do need, it's such a shocking thing to witness when someone does it. But I support sex workers of all kinds, dancers, exotic dancers. And, listen, the one thing I'll say is like, let's come prepared with our ones and our tips and, pay a man and pay a woman for a man's work and a woman's work.
I will never forget being in college and a bunch of girlfriends were like, hey, do you want to go to girls' night at some whatever bar it was? And I just assumed it meant like us girls were going out. Like I just moved from India to like North America. So I was just like, okay, great. And so we went
with girls.
And all my girls were there. It was like dollar highballs. So we're just like,
oh boy.
Yeah, having a couple drinks. And these really... I didn't clock it because I was just like happy to be there. And it was all women. It was only women there. And then like 4 lovely gentlemen like walked up to our table. They were like in suits, like looking very nice. And were chatting to us and being really sweet. And this one guy was talking about how he wanted to study like, I don't know, like biology. And like go to university and study biology. And I was just like, oh, so nice. And then like he kind of wandered off and then they were talking to other people. I didn't really, and then all of a sudden like the lights went out. One light came up and then they all walked out buck ass naked with rings on their things. And we're doing like 1-arm push-ups. And I remember I screamed.
Yeah.
And ran to the back wall, turned around like full Blair Witch Project, and just went, he needs to go to college. I was like, you don't learn biology like this. What's happening?
God.
And I had no idea that. And then what was the crazy thing is after these wonderful dancing and athletic things happened with these very beautiful men with their beautiful bodies, they just like then were gone. And then they open like a door and then like 100 men just come in, who've been all like kept for like, so it's first 2 hours is ladies' nights. They give you dollar highballs. Then they bring out these naked men. Then the naked men go away. Then the drink prices go up.
Civilians.
And then they release the hounds. And you're just like, ah! And then I remember calling my boyfriend at the time and I was like, girls' night's gone wrong. Please pick me up. I don't know what's happening. It's not a bachelorette party, but it feels like it had the elements of surprise and trauma that usually accompany it.
So they're sort of just hoping, okay, like we'll get the ladies drinking and then the ladies are going to, because they've been amped up by these men, they're going to be so psyched to see 100 men come in. That's right. Not realizing like that's every woman's nightmare.
This is a nightmare. You've released us into like the lion's den and like closed the doors. Like the whole thing was so.
Oh God.
It's
oh
a
God.
really. So my boyfriend, I remember, pulled up in his truck. He, by the way, had no idea what this was. He just thought like, oh, she wants to come home. Fine, super sweet guy. He pulls up in his truck. I get in the truck, and he handed me a purple popsicle. I'll never forget that. And I was like, ah! And I was like. I was so young. I was just like, I don't know. I'm not. And then I remember we did bachelorette party where it was like all this penis stuff on set and it was constant.
Yep.
Right. And Dr. Sadie's like up for it and just being wild. And I remember I had to do very little acting in that because I just remembered that night where I'm like, everything about this makes me feel uncomfortable. Everybody just keep your clothes on, have a seat.
Listen, but there's always that person, and that's why I love that episode. Is like there's always that person who's too into it, who's too excited to have strippers. That's usually me anyway. And then there's the person who's like, I have to leave. Like it's like having a fucking mental breakdown when the strippers arrive. So it's like you always, there's always a sort of a mixed bag. Now, I will say the one thing I've noticed at bachelorette parties is the moment, the reveal of the stripper when like someone's delivering a pizza or someone's, calling to see like if the hotel TV is working or whatever that misdirect is always fun. And then all of a sudden, like someone brings out a boombox. You just said that,
and I think... like you said earlier on this podcast, I might be making this up.
Sure.
But I think it's true that at my mom's bachelorette party, it was getting like out of hand. It was like on a rooftop and it was getting like, like loud as in out of hand, just like singing, dancing, like everybody's having a good time. And the cops came and I feel like it just was real cops, but the women went up.
That's hilarious.
Like they went up. They got excited. And then a stripper did come after the real cops and then got like no response when he walked in. I feel like that happened. That's really funny. Now I have to text my mom.
Yeah. And if it didn't, you need to write that into something because that's so funny.
Yeah, they went up and then they were really just getting told off and then they all just sat there.
Funny.
And then the real stripper showed up dressed like a cop and then everyone was just sort of like, look, we try. We're being quiet. Leave us alone. I'm so sorry. We'll figure this out. And the guy's like, da 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 da.
Well, so what I was going to say is like that the thing that I have noticed, and I don't know if there's anything to do about this, but a lot of times after the fun has been had, and the ones have come out and the routine is over and it's really uncomfortable to then watch our professional dancer stripper have to collect the ones on the ground. That's never going to be easy to sit through. And then also like grab what is usually a black duffel bag and either put their clothes on in front of you or go into a bathroom to do it. Those moments are hard.
Yeah.
And I've survived. I want a t-shirt. Like I've lived through watching
like even you talking about it, you just heard about my experience at girls' night. Like I feel like hives forming on my body. I just had another moment. This I do know happened. I remember this was like the power of like, like the little mouse or something thinking that she can like overcome the elephant or whatever is I remember them all. I remember hearing women chanting, take it off. And I remember in my Blair Witch pose, like and turned to the wall going like, keep it on. Keep it on. Seeing if it could like get some traction.
Didn't really.
It's so sad, so sad. Then me with my purple popsicle later, and then my boyfriend being like, "So how was it? Was it fun hanging out with the girls?" I was like, "I can talk about it." I'm so scared. Okay, another question.
It's not everybody's bag.
Not my bag, but I realize you and I are now learning that we're like the yin to each other's yang.
Yes,
I feel
absolutely.
like we would be great. We would find a nice middle, and I would save you from some things, and you would push me to maybe like open my eyes and turn around. You never know. Okay, this question is from Erica from Philadelphia. She says, one of the most underrated characters on New Girl was Sadie. Not only was she super funny, but she was able to help Cece through a really difficult fertility scare as a professional. I always wish we'd had more of Sadie through the series. Were there talks of bringing in Diane Raphael more? If she came back in a reboot, what do you think Sadie would be doing now? All we get all day long is questions of reunion. Is there a reunion?
I bet.
Is there a reunion? And I think about what would the most beloved characters, if we did a reunion, be doing?
It's so funny though, because I think people think they want a reunion, and that's one exception to that. I'm very much so a fan of And Just Like That. I really enjoy the spinoff. It is a different, I view it, and I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings about it, but I personally I very much so enjoy that show. And I'm like, this is a reboot, or not a reboot. This is that show, and I'm framing my answer to this question thinking about And Just Like That, because the truth is not every character made it back onto the show. Okay. Big was on and then killed off immediately. And what I loved about that is like, okay, if you do imagine characters or a people and you cut to 15 years into the future or whatever, not every relationship stands.
Right.
People die. Shit happens. And in particular, it's what I love about it just like that is it's like Samantha, and I know, the real reasons why she's not back and the feud or whatever, but the truth is that makes sense to me that Samantha and Carrie are no longer friends. Like that they had a major falling out. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens in life. Not everything moves forward.
New Girl had that thing, right, where they were really authentic with their relationships, with their friendships. Like people, it was easier for them to have like physical intimacy before emotional intimacy. Like they didn't do like the usual formula on a lot of things, which is why I think it rang true, right? So what you're saying, I think has a lot of merit, because if we came back and we rebooted the show, there would have to be some real authentic shifts that would happen with that kind of time span. So, 1, who do you think we'd have to kill? 2, which relationship would be done? The will they, won't they is gone. They won't. And 3, what is Sadie doing?
God. I don't know that I could kill anyone. I'm just a guest star. That's not really my... I don't have that kind of power. I wouldn't dare kill any of the series regulars. Honestly, can't believe, and I love him so much. But actually, I don't know that he... Now, I'm not going to say his character dies, but I could see sort of a tragic end. But something like this is actually my fear. I always felt scared that I'll die in a way that's so dumb that people will have a hard time grieving me, because they'll be like, oh, we're so sad. What a devastating loss. But also like, what the fuck was she thinking? You know what I mean? And like something like that could have happened to him or Max, where it's like, it could be a really funny opening to the spin-off. Or
have you watched Bad Sisters?
No, is that what happens?
Bad Sisters, which Brett Baer and Dave Finkel are a part of. Just watch the opening scene.
Okay.
I recommend it to everybody, but it starts with a funeral. It's not giving anything away.
Okay.
But one of the best and funniest openings, like how to do comedy and death perfectly.
Oh, wonderful. I have to see it.
So maybe we'll steal an idea.
Sharon Horgan, who's my absolute favorite. I can't believe I haven't seen it. Sometimes it's hard for me to get to Apple TV, and I don't know why. But it's hard for me to find my way there.
Right, got you.
I don't know what Dr. Sadie would be up to. I have to imagine that, she probably had a mental breakdown during COVID. So many healthcare professionals did. I think that maybe she's still recovering from that. I guess she has a baby now. I don't think that she and Kay Cannon made it, the long haul. Maybe there's some custody issues. See, every pitch I'm going to have is so dark and so upsetting. Like, it's not going to be what you want.
We found you on a day. We really found you on a day today.
Yeah. honestly, like, I think that Dr. Sadie is maybe sober. But know that it took a while to get there. Okay. And it wasn't pretty.
Journey. By the way, this show I would watch. Whatever is Dr. Sadie's journey was, I mean.
It was not easy.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I feel like she
was
she like dark. Tried her hand at stripping. I can just see the duffel bag in Dr. Sadie's hand. That used to be like her medical bag, her medical equipment bag.
Oh
and
my God.
Now her little nurse's outfit has just got like a whole different meaning.
Yeah. You know, Dr. Sadie's like an onion. Like, who knows? She could have gone so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
I always say, like, I think I said this to Kay too. When we did the eggs episode, it was a very pivotal episode in my real life because we were all, I feel like you were sitting with us on the back of this golf cart. And she was talking about how she knew that her husband was the one. And I was like, how do you know? And I was dating a guy at the time.
I do remember being in this conversation. Yes. Go on, though.
Yeah, I remember because she said, you know, when you look into the eyes of your boyfriend or your partner and you can see your children's faces. You can see what your babies will look like. And I remember being like, oh, and going home to my boyfriend who I really cared for at the time and being like it felt like the end of like a, you know, those Curb scenes where I was just like, oh, the music's playing and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I don't see anything. What does that mean? I don't see anything. And it really kind of got in my head like a little bug. And then with the next person I dated, it was wild. It was just, I don't know if it's...
What a litmus test.
It was. Well, it's also that age, you know, in your life where you're kind of going like, you're looking for different things and you're looking for something more in a partner than just like, whatever, the fun side. And so it was interesting, but I remember sitting on the back of the golf cart and it was one of those weird like art and life like moments where we're doing this episode about eggs and we're not in our 20s anymore. And it just felt really weird. And it was supposed to be about Zoe's character, but it really is about Cece being a good friend and finding out that she's got like a situation going on and putting pressure on her. But then walking away from that set, sitting on the back of the golf cart with amazing women who are just like really sharing like some eye-opening moments for themselves. And then you're having these real impacts in your relationships.
You know, that's the cool thing about, for listeners, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, what is it like on set? I'm so curious about TV and film. And I know I was complaining about working hours, but there's something to be said for, and this is why actors get a bad rap. I love actors. Me too. Love actors. They're just open and wonderful people. Sorry. But one thing I love about being on set is, and it's sort of changed now with phones and a lot of people are on their phones. I'm really not because I'm like, this is such a precious experience. I always leave my phone in my trailer because of those conversations where you're like, oh, you're kind of open because you want to be emotionally available to the scene and you want to be present. And so when you're walking onto a set and trying to prepare for whatever the scene is and thinking about it. And then you have these real life conversations that end up being just so incredible. And you learn so much about people. And it's one of the things I think I struggled with the most during the pandemic was like the loss of being on set and having, I don't know, it feels like it's a different portal where you can... It's not weird to have that conversation on a golf cart. Yeah. It's just not.
It wasn't. It was like, it's true. There is sort of like with wonderful actors and that you get to meet, you all of a sudden go really deep into these conversations and it's people that aren't scared of those conversations. I would think I get asked a lot about like chemistry, right? Because people talk about like chemistry with Cece and Schmidt or with Jess and Nick or whatever, or the cast in general. And I'm sure for, you know, a lot of people, their definition of it is when they talk about chemistry, it's like they think about it like in real life terms. Like, ooh, I really want to do this thing with that person. Like,
right.
Some delicious chemistry like that. But for me, the chemistry was, especially like when I was working with Max, but then you'd have phenomenal people like yourself come on the show where it was just like true trust.
Yeah.
Like something unspoken. And that is just something between two people where you know you're about to be really vulnerable and to try something silly or weird or bizarre. And the other person is looking you dead in the eye and you've got a bunch of crew standing around you going like, I got you. Go for it. Go for it. I got you. It's going to be cool. Try it. Who cares? Try it. Get weirder with it. And
Absolutely.
That's like we were talking about like your first scene. You remember that feeling. And I do feel like it was one thing that New Girl did, just had naturally on that set, which was like, it was team show.
Yes.
Who can make this the funniest? Go. We got you. We'll keep pushing it. Go. And it was like, and it took me about a year to kind of get out of my own head of feeling just super lucky to be there, where I was like, oh, like this is really safe. And if it doesn't work, they're not going to air it. Right. But we're just going to try all these things, which is why we became like in this weird like alt land a lot of the time, too, where they're even like the writers, everybody was just like, let's go. Let's keep trying to do more. And sometimes it got like a lot more.
Sure.
But that energy, that chemistry of trust, of being able to just do it.
Yeah.
And there was no competition as in like, who's the funny, like you said, the funniest person, but how do we make the show the funniest?
Yes.
Or the most real? Like, I really need to get there to a place where I have to cry or break down or do the thing. And I got you there too. It's okay.
Well, and I think that, you know, it is such a technical creative space where it's like, it's more technical than creative. There's, you know, technicians and camera lenses and equipment and wires and there's more of that than there are people who are in the scenes and trying to embody this part, right? So you really, I also think for women, there's another challenge, which is most crews are predominantly male. That's starting to change, especially though when we were starting New Girl, that was the case. That is the standard of our industry, which is that most crew members are men. And so as a woman artist, to come onto a set and already feel like I am stripping down to, well, probably taking my clothes off if I got the part I wanted. But I actually, my job here is to look stupid. My job here is to fail, to push so far that I'm making a choice that I think maybe people won't like, you know? And I think for women in particular, there's that added challenge of the sort of good girl like mentality of like, I got this job, so now I just have to do it right. And art is not interesting when it's correct. It's interesting when it's not. And so I do think actresses have this added weight of like, how do I feel free and open and wanting to fail, not avoiding failure so that the network executives don't get upset with me, so that the showrunner doesn't come out and give me notes, so that my co-star like doesn't think I'm wasting time, you know, all of the things that run through our heads. And that's, you know, I've gotten a lot better with it through the course of my career where I'm like, oh, now I have a new standard, which is actually to risk more. And I think you get a little older, the vanity piece in some ways gets harder, but some ways like with kids now, I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going home to two people who like really think I'm great. So I'm ultimately good no matter how this day ends.
Yeah.
But it's not an actor's medium. It's a director's medium, TV, film. And so it's like, we're told like, hey, they're ready, go. But we never get the opportunity to say like, but hold on, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Because then you're difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that was one of the sweetest things in my working with Max Greenfield a lot is that the characters like arc all of a sudden got a little complicated, emotional, hurtful. Like, there's cheating involved and like fertility issues involved and all this stuff that my character had to kind of all of a sudden jump in. And sometimes I'd be only working one day a week. So then you show up and it's like, and go. And you have to get in it. And that's when I talk about chemistry. That's what was the great chemistry between Max and I, is that he was just like he's just an incredible scene partner who was just like, I'm going to sit in, no matter what everybody else is saying, we're going to sit in this until we get there. And I got you, and just keep pushing. It was just like a beautiful thing of trust. And it was the same when I would do scenes with Zoe, and they were just like, be silly best friends out of nowhere. And it's like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And we had to just kind of like find our path into like the thing. And we had each other, and it was really, that was just like a wonderful thing. I also remember them trying to put like Cece and Coach together. I don't know if you know this. They tried to have us date and have a relationship on the show. And Damon and we had to do this big kiss outside the loft. And he had to like pick me up and like be holding me and like against a wall. And I think I chipped his tooth. Then I think he tried to pick me up, and then he kind of dropped me and then made a comment about like, well, I can't because this part's big. And I was like, you say what? And we were just dying laughing. And then finally Video Village was dying laughing. And they were just like, whatever the thing is with you guys in real life, like you're so deep in brother-sister land in real life.
Yeah.
Your bodies are like the opposite ends of a magnet and they're running from each other.
Yes.
And so they flipped the whole nature of our relationship. And then it became like we were friends and we were helping everybody else. And the fact that the show could see those things and just embrace it and be like, all right, let's pivot and make this work so that we can keep the energy. Yeah, exactly. Authentic in the show. Because when you watch it, you know when it's bullshit. When you're like, these people, this is not the thing.
Well, it's so funny though, because I've also had the experience of thinking I have amazing chemistry with this person. And then watching it and being like, oh God, that didn't translate. And then the opposite has been true too, where I'm like, I have got nothing with this gentleman. Like he is toxic to me. I can't believe I have to fake whatever. And then seeing it on screen and being like, God damn it. What I was playing as repellent is weirdly reading in this camera as interest and So I do think that's often true as well, which is like the camera is taking on things and they're seeing things in Video Village that are like, it's just different.
Yeah.
And I'm not a director. That's the mystery of like what directors do. But
it's one of those moments when they're like, okay, got it. And you're like, really?
Yeah,
you really get it? Because I feel like...
I promise you, I didn't get it.
That's right. I didn't get it.
Like, I will never move on to the next scene.
Those are the worst drives home, too. You're driving home and you're just like...
Oh, I always figure out the scene on the drive home.
Always,
like,
always.
That's what I meant there.
Yeah. June, I love you. Thank you for coming on this weird, wily podcast of us.
I was so happy to be here. So nice to think about New Girl and the massive, success it was, and also just what a lovely experience it was. So thank you for having me, and I beg all of you to not fact check a word I've said. Not a word.
You can, I always know whenever I get really happy, I mix up my words. Even now, it's like coming on this weird, wily podcast of us. Because my brain is just going, it's us. It's us right here. And I can't even say of ours. Well, that is our show. Bye.